Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is about how to get started with MeshCore. So for those of you who don't know already, MeshCore is a text messaging system that doesn't use the internet. So you can use this in areas where there's no internet or cellular connectivity, and you can use smartphones like Android or iPhones to communicate with each other, and also with standalone devices like this LILYGO T5 here. Now MeshCore has been growing very fast lately, and we can see lots of users in my area alone, and it's quite funny because we've got lots of users chatting away on this kind of public channel here, and it reminds me a little bit like the old chat room days on the internet. So as well as the public channels, which are a lot of fun to play with, you can meet some new friends on here. There's lots of like-minded individuals into the same stuff. You can also do private direct messaging, so if you've got family communications you want to set up, you can do that with MeshCore. It's highly encrypted, and no one's going to be able to read your messages or snoop in on the conversation. You can also see where users are on a map, so it's great for tracking, especially if you're going for like hikes and stuff like that and you don't want to rely on the cellular communications. So how does MeshCore work then, and what is this little device here? Well, basically MeshCore uses a technology called Lora, and that is not built into your smartphone, so you have to have a companion radio to link to your phone. So the phone is linked to the companion radio by Bluetooth, and then the companion radio can then make connections with other users in the area. So you can see all these other users on the map here, and we can converse with any of these by sending them a direct message. So how do you get started with MeshCore then? So I'm going to take you through step by step setting up your first MeshCore device. So the first thing you're going to want to do is head over to your app store for your particular smartphone. If it's an Android phone, then it will be Play Store usually. If it's an iOS device, it will be the App Store. So in this case, we've got an Android phone. So we're going to head off to the Play Store here, and we're basically going to search for MeshCore here. So we can type in MeshCore and it should appear right at the top. And you can see here that is the MeshCore app. So you're going to want to go and install that, and we'll let that install. If you're on iOS, then you do exactly the same. It's a unified experience across both devices, so it's not going to look different if it's on the iPhone or if it's on Android. They both just work exactly the same. So it's now installed. I'm going to hit open, and that will start the MeshCore app. And that's all we're going to do with the smartphone for now, because we need to set up the companion radio. So MeshCore companion radios come in a few different variants. This is a Heltec V3. These are available on Amazon. They cost about £25, but they're very readily available. And all you've got to do is load some software on there. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So you're going to need a computer for this. Any computer will do, as long as it can run a Chrome web browser. So you're going to head off to the meshcore.co.uk website here, and you can see this is the front page to our website. And then you're going to click on the menu item up here that says Web Flasher. Once you're in this, then this is where the fun starts. So we've got our Heltec companion radio here, and we've also got a USB-C lead which is plugged into our computer. Now it's important that these are actually a proper USB-C lead carrying data, not just the power supply ones that you get maybe like with a power bank or something like that. They probably won't work. So first up, we're going to plug in the Heltec to the computer. And not surprisingly, nothing happens on this screen. Depends on your device, maybe something will appear on the screen or not. Then over on the MeshCore flasher, we're going to select Heltec V3. You can see the image of this device pops up. And we're going to want to select the highlighted one here, which is Companion Radio Bluetooth. Click on that. Now on this section, if this is the first time you are doing this, I recommend clicking the Erase Device button. You can see this pop up here. Basically, if you're just updating the firmware on your companion radio, you don't need to hit this Erase Device button. If you do, it will erase your identity on the device once you've set it up. So it's advisable not to use this erase other than maybe the first time you ever put the MeshCore firmware on there. So with that selected, I'm now going to hit Flash, and you should see this little pop-up up here. Make sure to click on this one, CP2102, hit that, connect, and that is it. It will do the process of flashing, and once it's finished, you'll see something on the screen. So nearly done, just about completed, and we are done. So I'm just going to disconnect the USB cable, give it a power cycle, plug it back in, and then you should see the MeshCore logo and also the Bluetooth pin. So we can now set up the smartphone. So if we bring the smartphone back here, and then open the MeshCore app, we can go connect, and then we see MeshCore no name as our device. So we're going to hit that. It's going to ask you to pair and connect on Bluetooth, so we say yes to that. If the screen goes dark on this, you can just hit this top button and it will bring it back to life. So 321242, 321242, and that is our pin code. And once we've done that, the app will connect to there. And we've already got a device shown as well. So somebody in the area has pinged up in the space of time we've just set that up. So it just shows you we've got quite a lot of users around here. So you can see here already more users just keep adding to the contacts list. So this is the contacts list. This is where you'll basically kind of manage your contacts, and you can start messaging from here. You can do direct messaging by tapping any one of these. You'll see there's a slight difference between the two icons here. We've got one that looks like a little antenna. These are basically repeaters that we'll come on to a bit later, but basically you can't message those. They are just like relays effectively, so they're ways of expanding the reach of the network. And then the users have like a little emblem of a person, so it's quite easy to work out what's what. You've got battery gauge up the top here as well, which shows you the battery level, even though there's not a battery plugged into this, it's just plugged into USB. You can also search contacts as well. You can filter them by different sort of parameters. You can do heard recently, and it'll order them in list of when they were last heard. And then up here, this little cog, unsurprisingly, is your settings section. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just change the name of this device here, so we can do Andy test. And then I'm just going to basically save that on there. Now on here you can actually set your position if you want to by using the map. So you can scroll into where you want to basically say that you are on this map. So you've got complete control over where you are saying you are on here. So I'm just going to ping myself somewhere around Hartford on there, and that will be good enough for that. So next up we've got radio parameters. You will want to set these specifically for where you are based, because it will be different for each country. We've yet to decide on frequency plans for each country, so let us know in the comments if you know of a good frequency to operate on in your area, and we'll add those frequencies to here, maybe like a sort of drop down box for different regions. Other thing you've got here is identity key, which is your private key. We're not going to sort of go into that in this video because it's a bit more advanced. And you can also reboot this device remotely by just tapping on that reboot button. So that's it for settings. Come out of the settings. Down the bottom you've got channels. Now there is a predefined channel which is set up, which is the public channel. This does have an encryption key which is kind of baked into the software. Later on we are going to add more channels, so you can add private channels on here, but it's not so necessary to use these because you can actually sort of obviously direct contact with any of your contacts that you've got there. Also you've got the map screen which you can go into and then see where the other devices that you've picked up. So you see these three that we've actually picked up, two repeaters over this kind of little area over here, which is pretty nice. You can see that those have just appeared pretty recently, so these are kind of active if you like. So next I'm going to show you how you can set up another device to talk to this one. It's very, very straightforward. All I've done here with this side is just run through exactly the same process as I did to set up this one. So you just do exactly the same thing. You can call it something different in the name, and now we have two MeshCore devices up and running. Now right off the bat, these two devices won't actually know that each other exists, so you can't actually message or do anything. You can see we've got a blank contact list here. So you have to do a process on MeshCore called an advert, and that basically notifies devices in the area that you are available on the network. So you just click on this little thing up here, advert 0 hop, and you'll see this one has appeared on this side but not this side. So for that you have to then do the same on the other side, and then we'll appear in the list. So now these two MeshCore devices can see each other. You can just tap on the other user and you can send them a message, and this is like an encrypted message, and you can see here we get a notification and a little one icon there showing we've got one message, and then we can reply to that message, just say hi back, and then it will appear on the other side. You also see that on the screens of the devices, which is quite nice as well. So if your phone's in your pocket and you've got this device out, you'll actually see the messages come in on the screen. Also, you'll be able to message on the public channel. So if we just go into the public channel here, and the public channel here, you see this one's got some extra messages on here. But you can message on the public channel, hi test, and we'll see it come through on this side. And actually what's interesting about the public channel is you don't have to do that advert process. You'll always see messages come through on the public channel if somebody else has kind of sent them, whether you've actually exchanged adverts or not. So it's important to remember that even if you have received the message on the public channel, it doesn't mean that that person is going to be in your contact list. And this would be a good example actually, because Nismo TDEC has just sent a message and he's probably not going to be in my contact list. So what you could do is you could actually say to Nismo, hey, Cole, I know his name's Colin, send a flood advert. And I'll tell you why I'll say do a flood advert. A flood advert will travel across the whole mesh, whereas a zero hop advert will not. It's mainly designed for if you're very, very close to another MeshCore device. Later on we'll talk about the mesh side of MeshCore and how that actually works. So that covers messaging between two devices, and that's really easy to set up. But what if a third one comes along? So we'll just say hello on the public channel on this one, and you'll see that both these two devices actually received that message on there as well. So all of these three can actually talk to each other on the public channel, no problem at all. Due to the limitations of radio, one of these devices might not actually be able to pick up the signal from this TDEC here. It's highly likely that will be the case if these are separated by like a kilometre or something like that. So in order to make that work, we can use a thing called a repeater. So this is a MeshCore repeater. You can actually build these yourself using small little boards which we stock on our website, and then you can put them in your own 3D printed case, or soon we will actually have a device that is ready to go. You just turn it on and it just works as a repeater. So you might already be familiar with Wi-Fi repeaters that boost your Wi-Fi signal in your house. These are very similar. What a repeater will do on MeshCore is it will hear the signal from one of these and then just repeat it out again. So if this was up on a very tall hill and these two couldn't actually communicate directly, the signal would go through this repeater and then be heard on the other side, and then hopefully it will work the same way back. So the process of repeating this signal we call a hop, because it's basically hopping through the repeater. So from this device to the repeater would be 0 hops, and from the repeater to this device it would be 1 hop. So an example of hops I can show you in the app using this conversation I've been having with Brian here. You can see up the top 2 hops. So basically that means there's got to be 2 repeaters in that conversation link. So something like this. So this would be me, this would be Brian, this would be hop 1 and this would be hop 2. So it's used 2 repeaters to actually make that communication possible. And you can have any number of these repeaters out there in high locations or anything else. And they also run on different devices as well, so you can see. So this is one version of a repeater using one type of hardware, and this is another version of a repeater using effectively the same device that's in here. But we just put repeater software on this and give it an external antenna so it has better range. So we know that there's 2 repeaters making this communication happen. We can actually go one step further, and this is a little bit more advanced, and we'll probably come onto this later. But you can actually see what those repeaters are using their unique IDs, which they have. So we can see that the first repeater here, C0, is this one, and then the other repeater would be this one, which would be 74. And you can actually program in which repeaters you want to use by tapping that button here and then ticking the repeaters in order that you want them to actually pass your messages through. So to set up a repeater then, it's back to the MeshCore Flasher website. So one thing I mentioned, you can use the same device, that you used as a companion radio as a repeater. Because if we go to our Heltec V3 device here, you can see that we can also select a repeater firmware. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to install the repeater firmware on one of these for now. But the thing is with repeaters, you really do need to have a good antenna on them. That's the whole point. They need to be able to, perform better than these kind of devices that have got like an internal antenna in. So for that, you can use effectively the same device that's in this Heltec here, which just looks a bit like that. That's the sort of bare bones board of this, and that will fit in an enclosure like this, which you can buy from Zero Fox 3D, and that will give your repeater a nice enclosure. There will be some other repeaters coming along, and then obviously that gives you the scope to basically put on a really good antenna, like something like this, where you can actually put up in the loft space of your house or sort of hang up really high somewhere. And if you want to increase the range even more, you can use proper commercial grade antennas, which are obviously a lot better than this, and those will get your signal right out there. Anyway, to get this repeater firmware on to this Heltec V3, we're over to the flasher, click on the V3, and then we click on repeater. And what I'm going to do with this one is erase device. If you're changing roles, it's a good idea to, you know, erase the device. Basically, by changing roles, I mean if you're going from a companion to a repeater, always do an erase just to make sure that there's no residual kind of settings left in the device. So we're going to do that, and we're going to hit flash, and we're going to let this do its thing. So we're nearly done. I'm just going to bring my smartphone connected to the other node into shot here, so you can see what happens. So once this repeater firmware has been installed, then you will have to do a power cycle. So just remove the USB cable as we did before, and then plug back in. And then we see that. And what you should see is this light up on here, like the LED. And then on the screen of my other device, we see here Heltec repeater has appeared. So from here, we can actually configure the repeater by tapping on Heltec repeater here. So we can type in the default password, which is password on here, and we can reset this in a minute. And we can basically log in to the repeater now. So you can see here's some information's kind of being shared across the devices. So now you can see we've got a lot of information here about the repeater, and that's useful if you want to sort of see that information, including battery, you know, voltage and everything else. So we've got a couple of tabs down the bottom here. We can click on settings, and we can actually name our repeater what we want to call it. So Heltec repeater there. We can get some of the other settings from the device, so this should populate once that kind of does its thing. And you can see those are the settings for the repeater, and you can also do other things here, like set your password. You can set the position, you can sync the clock as well. So the first thing we're going to do here is sync the clock. Clocks are quite important on MeshCore. It's not so important for repeaters, but it just helps keep everything kind of, you know, online. So syncing the clock's a good idea. You can set the position of your repeater. You can do that on the map like we did before. So you can basically set where your repeater's showing on here. So I'm just going to do that now quickly, and we'll see where it ends up over there somewhere. So we're going to hit the tick on there, and that will say it's done and completed. Back out of here. So I'm going to set the admin password here. So a note about passwords: if you do set your admin password, you can still log into this repeater using just no password. So effectively it's like a guest. So you can see here guests are able to see this information. It's quite useful for people to see this information on the mesh. They can query your repeater and check their signal to the repeater. It's quite a good thing. So guest repeater logins are encouraged on MeshCore. If we want to log into the repeater with our admin password, I'll just tap that in now. Then once you get into there, it says you're logged in as an admin, and you can literally set your repeater up really easily. There's also a command line feature as well for kind of expert users. You can issue commands to the repeater itself, like the traditional advert command, and it will send the advert out over the air. Other things like you can type in clock. All of these parameters and stuff, most of these parameters are settable by the easier GUI interface in that settings tab there. So you can see we type in clock and we get the clock come back on there as well. A quick note about repeaters and adverts: it's not really necessary to advert your repeater. It will get discovered automatically by companion radios when they kind of try and form a path to, you know, a destination, or a public message kind of comes through. They'll just wake up and they'll just do their thing. So effectively you can just set these repeaters up and leave them unattended if they're running off batteries. As I say, there's going to be proper repeater hardware out there, solar powered, in a waterproof box, all ready to go. You just turn it on and it just works straight away. Very little configuration will be needed to set up a MeshCore repeater. So now we have our repeater set up, we can send a message from one side to the other. It will probably go directly, but there's a small chance it might actually automatically go through the repeater there. So I'm just going to send that message out, and we'll see here what actually happens. So the message has been delivered, and we actually are getting a direct path here. So it skips the repeater, which is kind of what you'd expect to happen. If I went out of range of this device, then this repeater would probably kick in and it would relay the traffic that way. But there is something else we can do on MeshCore. If we want to force it to go through the repeater, we actually can do that. So you can see here we've got the Heltec repeater, and it's in my list here, and the address is B7. You might be able to see that on the screen there. So if we find my TDEC Plus in the list and we tap on that, we'll see that obviously it's still saying direct. What we can do here is we can actually tap up here and hit set path, and then we can select that repeater. So if we find Heltec repeater here, I think it's B7. I've got a couple called the same here, but let's call up B7. So we do that, and then we hit the tick button. Now B7 is now in our path, so it should go through the repeater now. So we're just going to hit tick there, and then that will then change to one hop. There you go, one hop. And I'm just going to just say another hi there, hi, and you can see here it's done it. So obviously in here you can add as many repeaters as you like. You know, you can create a path of known repeaters. If you don't know them but you know their IDs, you can just type them in as well. So it's really flexible, and it prevents like lots of extra traffic happening, because if you're creating a path from one location to the other using a bunch of known repeaters, then you're not using like the whole mesh, how many, you know, hundreds of repeaters there could be out there. You're not using all of those, you're just using the ones you need to kind of make the contact. Now, another quick note about some of the stuff I've just shown you on the repeater admin side. So the repeater admin side, if you haven't registered your app, you can literally wait for like 15 seconds and then get into the repeater remote management, or you can actually unlock for $4.99 in the app. Now, the thing is, this 100% of this goes to the developer of the app, Liam Cottle, who's just done an absolutely amazing job in creating this MeshCore app, and he's just not slept for the last month or so. So if you really want to show support, you can go and support him by tapping that unlock, and it will obviously go through like an in-app purchase process, and then that timer will just go away. So far you've learned how to set up multiple MeshCore companion radios to talk to each other. You've learned how to set up repeaters, configure the repeaters, and also how to use multiple repeaters and create paths between those repeaters. There's another feature that MeshCore has that's really useful, and that is room servers. So a room server like this one here is a place where you can basically leave messages for other people to read at any time. They don't actually have to be online at the time, you know, to receive the message. So it's a little bit like an old school BBS system, or maybe even email. So to log into a room server, you can log in usually with the password hello. That's the default password. And then once you get into it, you'll see there's a bunch of messages from different people, just all logging in at different times. And when we log in, we see one has just appeared here. So we look at this one here, Nismo TDEC. If you hold on the message, you can see that this was received we received it at 2:37, which is now. And it's also got a sent timestamp as well, which is 11 AM. So Colin was busy at 11 AM sending messages on the room server, and we've only just logged in, so we've only just seen that message. Pretty cool, huh? So room servers can be installed and set up just the same way as you do with anything else, by going to the MeshCore flasher. So you just hit room server and then flash in the normal way. I'm not going to show you that again because you're probably bored of that process by now. And once you've loaded the room server firmware on the device, you can manage it a bit like you do with a repeater. So you can sign into the admin password, and then you can actually go into remote management and then configure admin password, guest password, and all of the other stuff. Also, you can configure a room server to also be a repeater. So it can be a room server and a repeater in one, which is a really nice feature to have. It saves you having a repeater and a room server as two separate devices. And you can do that by going into the command line and typing in set repeat on. And then that will turn the repeating feature on. I'm not going to hit enter because I don't want my one doing that. So as we come to the end of the video, there's one other thing I want to mention, and that is in the settings section, you have some settings for messaging. So basically, we've got these two settings here which say auto retry and auto reset path. So what do they mean? So auto retry will attempt to resend the message if it gets a failure. Let's sort of show you an example of that. So we're going to go over here. We'll try PR. Probably not going to be able to get across to him. So I'm going to just basically sort of say hi PR in here, and we'll see what happens. So it says sending, and then it said delivered. Oh, you know, you can never make this up, can you? All right, let's just try somebody else then. So let's try Nismo. That I've got quite a few failures on him. I'm going to say hi Cole. and we're going to hit go. So sending, and what we should see is normally, so you see now it says attempt 2 of 2, 3 of 3, and then it should just say failed at the end. Now you can retry by holding that down and retry sending that, and it will just do the process again and attempt to try and deliver that message. Doesn't look like that is going to happen. So you can see here we haven't actually got a path to Colin at the moment because that just says flood. So it's effectively trying to use all the resources of the network to try and contact Colin over there, and it's been unsuccessful. But if you did have a path and say you maybe moved out the area and that path wasn't quite valid anymore, you would find that what would happen is it would fail a few times and then that would be it. So the other feature that you've got on this is the auto reset path. So this is quite useful because what it would do is it would try to use the path that it knows works before, and then after, on the final go, it will revert to the flood, basically using the full resources of the mesh to try and, you know, make that contact. So that's quite good if you're mobile to use that auto reset path, because obviously the paths might change if you're moving around, and that is a good way of getting around that problem. So you might see a few failures at first, but as you move, a new path will be created automatically. So guys, this has been the full guide to getting started with MeshCore. Hopefully you found it useful and it will help you get connected to the existing meshes out there and even starting your own meshes. There'll be lots of more information coming on here, and don't forget to join my Discord where lots of the community are hanging out right now talking about this. So yeah, do join us on there and we'll catch you next time.